You can wipe a kitchen counter in 2 minutes and still feel as if the whole room is asking something from you. A coffee maker sits beside an appliance you barely use. A few envelopes lean against the fruit bowl. 2 refill bottles are waiting for space. None of it looks dramatic, but together it creates kitchen counter clutter that can make the room feel busier than it needs to. For women over 40, the goal is usually not a perfect kitchen. It is a kitchen that is easier to use, easier to wipe down, and easier to leave at the end of the day. So today, we are looking at 10 things that may not deserve a permanent place on your counters anymore. This is not about stripping the kitchen bare or hiding everything behind cabinet doors. Your kitchen still needs to work for real life. The question is simpler: does this item earn the space it takes up every single day? Counter space is working space. It is where you make breakfast, set down groceries, prepare dinner, pour a cup of tea, or place something for a moment while your hands are full. When too many things live there permanently, small tasks can start requiring extra moves. Shift the papers before cooking. Pick up 3 bottles before wiping. Move an appliance just to set down a cutting board. None of those actions is difficult on its own. It is the repetition that can make the space feel harder to use than it should. You do not need to solve the whole kitchen today. Just start noticing which objects truly support daily life and which ones have become permanent almost by accident. 1. Appliances. You do not use most days. Start with the appliance that has been sitting in the same corner for months. Maybe it is a blender you use a couple of times a month, a stand mixer that comes out for occasional baking, a sandwich press juicer waffle maker, food processor, or second coffee machine that once felt convenient to keep within reach. The question is not whether the appliance is useful. It may be very useful. The question is whether it needs to occupy prime counter space every day. There is a difference between something you use constantly and something you leave out, because putting it away feels like another job. If an appliance is heavy or stored in an awkward cabinet, keeping it out may genuinely make sense. But if you spend most of the week working around it, that convenience may be costing you more usable space than you realize. Notice what happens around a bulky appliance. Crumbs collect near the base. You move it to wipe behind it. A small container gets placed beside it, then another item appears, because that corner already feels occupied. Soon, one appliance has become a little neighborhood. If you use something nearly every morning, it has earned its place. If you use it occasionally, ask whether the open counter would serve you more often than the appliance does. 2. Paper piles that turn the kitchen into an inbox. The kitchen counter often becomes the place where the outside world enters the house. Mail gets dropped there, bills wait there, receipts, appointment cards, menus, forms, coupons and envelopes begin forming a small stack. At first the pile feels temporary. You are going to look at it later, then later becomes several days. What makes paper piles tiring is not simply how they look. Many of those papers represent decisions that still need to be made. Keep this, pay that, reply to this, check the date, ask someone about that, recycle this one, but not before writing down the number. You do not have to label that feeling or turn it into a bigger problem than it is. It is enough to notice that a small pile can keep presenting unfinished tasks every time you walk past it. If the counter is where papers naturally arrive, that is fine. Arrival does not have to mean permanent residence. Move the items that need action to one defined place. Let the items that do not need action leave the kitchen entirely. You do not need a complicated filing system. The important decision is simply that the counter is not the long-term home for unfinished paperwork. Vaca 3. Extra mugs and water bottles. Waiting for a reason. A mug you used this morning can sit on the counter for a while. 6 mugs do not need to. The same is true of water bottles, travel cups, tumblers, shaker bottles, and the extra cup someone carried in from another room and never took back. These items often stay because they still feel active. They may be clean. They may be drying. They may belong to someone else. They may be waiting for the next refill. But when several drink containers remain visible all day, the counter starts behaving like a holding zone. And holding zones have a way of growing. 1 bottle becomes 2. Then a reusable cup appears beside them. Then a lid sits nearby. because nobody is sure which bottle it belongs to. If there are drink items your household uses every day, give those a clear limited place. Backups, duplicates and extras do not need to live on the main work surface simply because someone may use them later. The counter should support what is happening now, not every possible version of what might happen later. Decor 4. Refills and backups you bought for convenience. There is a special kind of clutter created by sensible purchases. Extra dish soap, a refill pouch, backup coffee, paper towels, dishwasher tablets, cooking oil, a second container of salt, a package that was on sale. None of these things is foolish to own. The issue begins when the backup supply becomes permanent countertop scenery. A refill left beside the sink feels harmless because you know exactly what it is for, but it is still one more bottle to move one more label in view and one more item occupying space that could be used for something happening today. Backups can also become little reminders. The soap needs refilling. The coffee needs transferring. The new package needs opening after the old one is finished. If an item is not currently in use, ask whether it belongs with your supplies rather than on your active work surface. Keeping a backup is convenient. Keeping every backup visible is a separate decision. 5. Spices and cooking items. You do not reach for every day. A few daily essentials near the stove can make cooking easier. But many counters slowly collect an entire supporting cast. Oils, sauces, salt, pepper, spice jars, tea tins, honey vinegar seasoning blends, and condiments begin lining up along the backsplash. Every item has a reason for being there. That is exactly why this kind of clutter can be hard to question. The issue is not whether you use the item. It is how often. If you reach for olive oil every day, leaving it accessible may make sense. If a specialty vinegar comes out twice a month, it does not need the same status. When every cooking item is treated like a daily essential, the counter starts functioning more like storage than workspace. Try thinking in simple groups. What do you use almost every day? What do you use weekly? What do you use only occasionally? Only the first group has a strong case for permanent counter space. This is not about hiding every bottle. It is about letting frequency of use decide what earns visibility. Decor 6. Small decorative objects that create more visual noise than pleasure. A kitchen does not have to be purely practical. A plant-framed photo candle bowl or favorite ceramic piece can make the room feel personal. But small decorative objects have a way of multiplying. A sign near the coffee maker, a tiny vase, a seasonal figure, a decorative cutting board that is never used, a candle beside a plant beside a jar beside another small object. Individually, each piece may be lovely. Together, they can make a working surface feel crowded before you have even started cooking. This becomes especially noticeable when decorative pieces sit in spaces that also need to function. You move them to wipe. You shift them when you need room for a tray. You try not to splash them while cooking. The decoration begins asking for maintenance. The question is, not should I decorate my kitchen? It is, which pieces still add enough warmth or pleasure to justify the space they take up. One object you genuinely enjoy may have more impact than several small objects competing for your attention. A calmer counter does not have to look empty. It can simply have fewer things asking to be noticed. Decor 7. Return boxes and packages. Waiting to leave the house. This category is easy to recognize because it usually comes with a sentence. I need to return that. The box stays on the counter because you do not want to forget it. Maybe the item needs to go back to a store. Maybe the package needs a label. Maybe something inside belongs to a family member. Maybe the cardboard is waiting to be broken down. Whatever the reason, the counter has become a reminder system. Every time you walk into the kitchen, there it is. Not urgent enough to handle right now. Not finished enough to forget. That can be irritating in a very ordinary way. The object keeps asking for the same decision without helping you complete it. If an item is waiting to leave the house, give it a place connected to leaving near the door beside the bag you will carry out in the car when appropriate or in a designated return area. The kitchen counter does not need to keep reminding you about errands. Decor 8. Things waiting to be fixed, matched or put away. You probably know these objects as soon as you see them. A loose cabinet knob. A charger you are not sure belongs to anything. A lid without its container. A small appliance part. A battery. A pair of scissors someone left out. A screw that must belong to something. They stay visible because putting them away requires one more decision. Where does this go? Do we still need it? What does it belong to? Should I ask someone first? That is how a tiny object can sit on the counter for a week without anyone actually choosing to keep it there. An unresolved object does not automatically deserve prime space. If you need time to decide, give uncertain items one small defined holding place somewhere else. The goal is not to solve every mystery immediately. The goal is to stop using the counter as the place where every unresolved household question waits. Your work surface does not need to become a physical to-do list. Number 9. Too many utensils in countertop containers. A utensil crock can be useful. It becomes less useful when it holds every spoon whisk spatula, turner tong brush ladle peeler, and mystery tool you own. Then using it means sorting. You reach for one wooden spoon and 3 handles move with it. You need the whisk hiding behind an oversized spatula. You put clean utensils back and have to rearrange the container just to make them fit. The container looks organized because everything is technically standing in one place. But a system that makes daily use harder is worth questioning. Keep the tools you reach for constantly within easy reach. Let occasional tools live in a drawer or cabinet. This is another place where I use. It is not the same as I use it often enough to keep it out. A smaller group of true everyday tools can make the cooking area easier to use without changing anything about the way you cook. 10. Catch-all baskets and trays that no longer have a clear purpose. A tray can make a counter look organized. A basket can stop small things from spreading. But sometimes the container becomes permission to keep too much. Keys, vitamins, receipts, charging cables, pens, coupons, sunglasses, random kitchen tools, someone else's small belongings. Because everything is inside a tray, it can look intentional. But if the tray contains 6 unrelated categories, it is still functioning as a catch-all. A useful test is simple. Can you describe the purpose of the container in one sentence? This tray holds the coffee things we use every morning. Clear. This basket holds the mail that needs action. Also clear. This tray holds whatever ends up on the counter. That is a sign the container may be delaying decisions instead of supporting the kitchen. You do not necessarily need to remove the tray. You may only need to remove the things that do not belong to its purpose. The best countertop organizers create limits. They do not create permission for more clutter. And that brings us back to the real point. A calmer kitchen is not created by proving that you can keep every surface perfectly clear. It is created by being more selective about what gets to stay visible. Your coffee maker may stay. The fruit bowl may stay. The cutting board you use every morning may stay. The point is not emptiness. The point is usefulness. When you stop asking, where can I fit this, and start asking, does this need to live here every day, the counter begins to work differently. There is more room to set down groceries. More room to prepare food without rearranging several unrelated things first. Wiping the surface becomes easier because fewer objects have to be picked up and replaced. And the room may simply feel quieter because fewer unfinished tasks and unrelated objects are sitting in your line of sight. If you want to try this today, do not clear the entire kitchen. Look at one counter. Find one thing that is useful but not daily. One thing that is waiting for a decision, and one thing that has simply been there so long that you stop noticing it. Those 3 objects can tell you a lot about what your counter has been carrying. Your kitchen does not need to be perfect to feel lighter. It only needs to stop storing so many future tasks in plain sight.